This is the Harry Loomis Show.
Welcome back to the Harry Loomis Show, one day removed from the St. Louis Blues season coming to an end at the hands of the Winnipeg Jets in a soul-crushing 4-3 loss in double overtime in Game 7 in Winnipeg, a game that the Blues were less than 2 seconds away from winning and advancing to play the Dallas Stars. But empty net defense and bad third periods in the playoffs reared their ugly heads once again for the Blues. And now the season is officially over. But for the Blues, it's brutal right now. There's not a lot positive to say after last night's game, the way that things went down. But in the grand scheme of things, for Doug Armstrong looking at this team, this is a successful season. Make no mistake about it. Last 2 years, the team was kind of in no man's land, not really having much of a direction. There were some good pieces in place, but there wasn't a lot of structure, a lot of long-term stability. But some moves made in the offseason. Obviously, the offer sheets, Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway bared tremendous fruit for the team. Some low-risk moves. Ryan Suter, for the most part, was very, very good for the Blues. Matthew Joseph scored in Game 7. So did Radek Faksa. Alex Texier had his moments. I'll give him that. The Cam Fowler trade, obviously, on December 14th was spectacular, giving up a second and Jeremy Biakabatuka that we were likely never going to see in the NHL for a guy that led you in scoring in the playoffs with 10 points in 7 games. That's tidy work for Doug Armstrong, and it's something to build on for the season to come. But now we're going to take a look here at where the roster is at currently and see what this team needs. In my opinion, the biggest thing that this team needs, seeing how Jimmy Snuggerud was implemented in the lineup now, seeing that you have another right-handed one-time option, you need a bona fide second-line center. Braden Shen, if all goes well, should be your third-line center. The likelihood is that they're going to try to put Dalibor Dvorsky at the 2C next year. They're going to give him every opportunity he has to play. Army has said they are not going to fail him. But is that the best option? We're going to take a look now for the first time at the board and just see where I'm viewing this team going into 25-26. So this was on Daily Faceoff. These are the forward line combinations that they had implemented, and so I just went off that. I left some marks here that you can see on a couple players that we're going to talk to. First off, Robert Thomas, Jimmy Snuggerud, Braden Shen, Alexei Torpchenko, Nathan Walker, Dylan Holloway, Dalibor Dvorsky have no marks. I don't see any moves happening with them. Walker might be a free agent. I fully expect the Blues to bring him back. I would be shocked if they didn't. He is such a spark on that fourth line. I don't think you can replace that. There's not much to say there. Shen, there's a little arrow below because, like I said, I think this team will be at its best if Braden Shen is playing the third line center role or even possibly a winger role. I expect him to be back, not in the second line center role one way or another. Looking at free agency this year, though, there are not a lot of high-end forward options that I think will move the needle for the Blues. Obviously, Mitch Marner is the big piece. I don't expect the Blues to go for him. He is going to command at least $13 million per season. And if he hits the open market, it's probably going to be even higher than that, considering the bidding war that'll go for him. I just don't expect Doug Armstrong to do that. The highest paid players right now are Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas, making $8.125 million per year. That's a huge step up from that. And yes, Marner and Thomas were teammates on the London Knights. I just don't see that happening. Brock Besser is another free agent that could be good in this top 6. I just don't see the Blues making a push for him either. I expect Besser to be either probably a Minnesota Wild or Detroit Red Wing next season. But look at a couple other players. Pavel Buchnevich has a line under him. I expect him to be back, but I don't put him in that untouchable range that guys like Thomas and Snuggerud are. I think if the price were right, Army might look for a move for him, although I think that's maybe a 2% chance happening at most. Matthew Joseph, I don't know if I see him returning next year, depending on the development of guys like Dvorsky, on Holloway coming back, what they do with Alex Texier as well, who's a younger option than Matthew Joseph. He's got a line under him as well. They both have 1 year left on their contracts. I could see that one going either way. Joseph had his moments. He was really good down the stretch where he was able to play just about every game that 70 line looked really good. Um, but I could see him also getting shipped out of town to save around just under $3 million in cap space. Oscar Sundquist, to be honest with you, I don't expect him to be back. Certainly not the third line center role. And if you need a fourth line center, I would personally sign free agent Radek Faksa back. I really, really like Faksa this year, especially given Sundquist's injury history with the two ACL injuries. I would think that Faksa would be the safer play at 4C if you're signing him to a 2-3 year contract around $3 million. I would like that more than I would like an Oscar Sundquist signing, as much as I love Sundquist. A couple of the interesting ones. Jordan Kyrou has a line under him. I think it would be gutsy as hell for Armstrong to trade Kyrou. I can't think of another player, of a bigger player that Armstrong would trade than Kyrou, especially considering that Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko were pending free agents and that team was going nowhere and they probably weren't going to sign back. Kyrou has plenty of years left at $8.125 million. We always talk about Kyrou as a potential trade piece if you're trading someone in the core. He definitely does make the most sense. I've been critical of Kyrou in the past, but he definitely, in my opinion, had his best season of his career this year. The 36 goals and really kind of starting to build that 200-foot game. He's playing more physically. He's got a better 200-foot game, a little bit more responsible on the defensive side. But this is the last year before his no-trade clause kicks in as part of his contract. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. The only options I could see the Blues trading a guy like Kyrou for would be for a high-end right-shot defenseman or a very high-end second-line center. I think Kyrou might be too much for a second-line center, but if the name I've been hearing a lot is Noah Dobson from the Islanders. If the Blues try to make a trade for him, a big right-shot defenseman, I think Kyrou would more than likely have to be the centerpiece of that deal. And I also have two lines under Jake Neighbors and Zach Bolduc for that similar reason. I think if they're going to make a big trade like that, they could also be pieces that go. I think the more likely one to go would be Bolduc, which I wouldn't like to see. But Neighbors did get extended. He has about a 3-year deal that he just signed this season. Bolduc does not have an extension. He's coming off a pretty disappointing playoff run. 1 assist in 7 games was not what I expected to see out of him. So I could see him potentially in a trade if the Blues are willing to make a really big splash, which I think this might be the time to do. I think you see that you have something here. You took the best team in the regular season all the way to the brink, to the absolute brink. And I think that's something to build off here. So looking at the lines right now, I'm going to take a look here in a moment and show you what I'm thinking and where the holes might have to be filled. Reflection is kind of tough on this thing, so it's hard to make it work. But this is kind of what I think the best case scenario would be with these lines. I think the big piece that I removed is Zach Bolduc because I do think that a trade could happen and it could involve a guy like him. I would hate to see it. Again, I'm a big Bolduc fan. I love what he's able to bring. But if you're going to make a push, you're going to have to make some moves. I think the most interesting possible scenario is moving Schenn away from the from the center position in general, putting in third line left wing. I think a potential third line. This is obviously there'll be some fluctuating. This isn't what the lines are going to be come playoffs next year or anything like that. But I think a combination maybe of Schenn, Dvorsky, and maybe a right wing like Snuggerud, if he's not on the first line, could be really, really interesting to see. I'm still not 100% sure what's going to happen to Kyrou. They do need a second line center. If they're not able to get a big fish, get a trade or anything like that, I would be able to live with Dvorsky moving up and probably putting Schenn back here. Maybe Matthew Joseph slides in. I don't expect Texier or Sundquist to be back either. This would include them signing Faksa and Walker as well. I think the Blues have a lot of quantity and quality at their forward line, so it's kind of more fine-tuning to really round out this roster. The defense, however, is where there's a lot of work that might need to be done. So the Blues have 9 defensemen on their main roster right now. A guy like Adam Yurchek isn't ready yet. We won't be seeing him next year. But these are the 9 you got right now. Fowler was spectacular. He's got 1 year left on his contract. Definitely not making a move. He's staying put. In terms of a contract, I'm not 100% sure what they would do with him, but that time will come. Colton Parayko's not going anywhere. He had his best season this year, in my opinion, uh, before the injury at the very least. He is your number one, and he's finally playing like a number one. The first one we've really had since Alex Petrangelo. Really like what I'm seeing out of Colton Parayko right now, despite all of his flaws. He has his bad moments, but you're not doing anything with Colton Parayko. Philip Broberg was a revelation. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Blues lock up Holloway and Broberg to long-term extensions this offseason. But then it gets interesting. Justin Falk has 2 years left at $6.5 million per year. I don't believe Army has ever bought anybody out, but he is a very likely buyout option this year. And really, the reason why a guy like Noah Dobson is rumored or linked to the Blues so much because you have one high-end right shot defenseman. Justin Falk isn't what he was back in 2022 when he received Norris votes, and Matthew Kessel would be a perfectly fine sixth or seventh defenseman. Trying to make him play a top four role is just not what he is. It's just not what he's going to be. Plain and simple. Another potential buyout option would be Nick Leddy. He's got 1 year left of his contract at $4 million this year. He's unfortunately injury has been a part of it, but he's just declined every year of his contract. I don't expect him back next year, especially over a guy like Tyler Tucker, who really showed flashes this year up until the injury in Game 4 of the playoffs. I think he's really earned a spot on the full-time everyday roster. And Ryan Suter, I would take Ryan Suter back in the role he played, $775,000 cap it with incentives. He sounds like he wants to go another year. Obviously, he is what he is. It was really tough with the injuries to Leddy and Broberg early in the season to put him in on the top line, but he really held his own in that regard. If you're able to stay healthy and keep him on a third pair, just a smart veteran shutdown role, I really don't have too much of a problem with that. It's all about how you utilize him, though. And then the other one is Torrey Krug, who missed the whole season with injuries. He's 34 years old. He has 2 years left on his contract as well. Same term, same value as Justin Falk. I don't expect Torrey Krug to play again. Unfortunately, that injury is a very, very tough one to come back from, especially for Krug being 34 years old. I wish him the best. I did enjoy him for the most part on the Blues. He seems like a great guy by all accounts. I don't expect him to play in the NHL again. I don't expect him to play for the St. Louis Blues again. So that's where all the questions really come in. This is why I think a guy like Kyrou could be floated around in trade rumors, just because you need a right shot defenseman. You need another top four guy desperately. You need a really good puck moving defenseman to pair with Philip Broberg, and your top four is set. It's not a great free agency class, like I said, and Armstrong has usually made his biggest moves via trade, not free agency. Look at Ryan O'Reilly, look at Braden Shen, look at Pavel Buchnevich. He's a better trader than he is a free agent center, in my opinion. So this is what we're looking at with defensemen going into next season, the potential holes that might be there and what I would look for. So here's where I think it's at. Obviously, the big priority is the second pair of right shot defensemen. Everything else, I think, is serviceable as is. I think any combination of Ryan Suter, Tyler Tucker, Matthew Kessel on the third pairing would be pretty solid. Opening day, I'd probably expected to be Suter and Tucker, like how it was a couple games in the playoffs. But this is the big thing. This really, that and second line center will make or break the entire offseason for the Blues. Goaltending isn't a concern. Yes, Joel Hofer is a restricted free agent. I expect the Blues to be able to sign him without any issue. Looking at Puckpedia, it looks like the Blues are projected to have about just under $6 million in cap space for the 2025-2026 season, which isn't a lot, but it is manageable. I think the Blues are going to be able to put out a pretty solid roster and retain the guys they need to retain with the money that they have available. So we'll take a look at what I think the real roster should be, the fixes that we need, and just kind of see how we're feeling based on that. So here's what I think the best case scenario Blues roster looks like. going into next season. Neighbors, Thomas Buchnevich, simple. Holloway, a new second line center. Kyrou, probably. Shen, Dvorsky, Snuggerud, I think would be a great third line in some capacity. And then Torpchenko, Fox, and Walker. Do not mess with that fourth line. Fowler, Pareko, Broberg, and a new right shot defenseman. And then Suter, Tucker, could be Kessel. Bennington and net, obviously, he's not going anywhere. Hofer as a backup goalie, and then Joseph Kessel as the scratches. I think you have something here with this roster. Who you fill in those spots, your guess is as good as mine. I think maybe the best center available in free agency is Sam Bennett, who I don't see the Blues going after. That's why I think it's going to be a trade and not free agency, because would you if you're going to sign a free agent like a Morgan Geekie, I don't know if that's necessarily an upgrade on the second line. There's been names like Bo Horvat, Matt Barzal that have been floated out. There are really good second line centers available in trade if you're willing to pay up, which I think Army should be willing to do so. Same thing as on defense, not a great free agency class in general. Neil Pionk was one of the biggest names available, and he got overpaid by the Jets. Trades. It's going to be trades. It's going to suck to get rid of some guys. But if the Blues want to really take that next step and be a threat in the second round, the third round, maybe make a final sometime in the near future, this is a really, really big offseason for Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen. And I think that they are the guys in place to get the job done. So that's kind of my early, kind of scratchy ideas on what the Blues should do in the offseason. Obviously, it sucks to be out this early because now we got to wait almost 2 months for July 1st and that cycle to really begin. But it's going to be a really, really interesting offseason for the Blues. It's a fun, exciting time to be a fan of the team. There's expectations now. Hockey's at their best when your team has expectations, when you see the way the team's built and you know that they can win. Man, I wish we were still playing though. But let me know what you guys think. We'll talk again sometime soon. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.
This is the Harry Loomis Show.